22nd, 2025 session. First thing on our agenda is to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to
We
approve.
have a motion to approve. A second.
Make a motion to.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We have the minutes before us of May 15th and May 20th of the canvassing of the special election on the 20th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes if there's any corrections? I know with that one.
Yeah, I'll make the motion with the minor adjustment and word.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Jake, you are next up.
Okay. I really don't have a whole lot. I have a permit here. It's a sanitary sewer permit. Jared has one out and looked at it. It is on 310th Street.
A sewer permit for the.
Sorry, it is actually no replacement, so they are they're updating their system and then outletting our ditch.
So when we do this, does this have to go through public health as well?
Yes. So you're not, sorry. Russ will submit us a letter that says that this system is up to date or compliant that we get on file.
Okay. Thank you.
Maintenance update. So with the rain there, our blade operators have been out working on roads, blading, and trying to get things shaped up and taking advantage of the moisture that we have out there. So we did get quite a bit of moisture, so they'll continue the rest of this week blading. Seeding and mulching, we finished seeding on Quincy Avenue and 305th Street. We'll probably have to go back and do some more after that rain that hit in that area. That was pretty heavy, so we'll kind of see how things start to grow and then we'll adjust from there. We're working on, when it rains, a lot of times our trucks or other guys that are on the Culver crew, we're spot hauling rock to the blade guys in various locations throughout the county. So just kind of where they needed rock or mud showing up or something like that. Then signs, Pete worked on signs on the 305th and Quincy area to get that all updated now that we got the pipes replaced and the intersection regraded. And then we were mowing shoulders on gravel roads. We were out mowing again today. We did take a little break when it was raining.
Thank you.
Hickory Avenue, last week I told you we were gonna start this week. Mother Nature said, well, let's not do it this week, let's look at next week. So we're gonna start on Tuesday next week on Hickory Avenue. And that is a little larger culvert. We're gonna replace, we're removing a box culvert and another pipe there side by side. So the plan is to start that next Tuesday, and we anticipate that taking a week. A lot of it depends on what the conditions are once we get into that road with these wetter conditions. So that's maintenance stuff. Miscellaneous construction, Norris Asphalt, we got quite a bit done. The contractor was able to wrap up the topsoil last week. We got the rain, so we're gonna have to wait and see when things dry out, get to do some more. I believe we are ready for seeding to come in and start the seeding operation, which does include some soil prep. So we are hoping that once it dries out, that we haven't had that much erosion. So the other day when I was down there before the last big batch of rain, it looked pretty good actually. So
And then they'll mulch.
yep, everything will be mulched when we're done. That gets reseeded. Some areas are already seeded and taken, and we're actually gonna work on removing some of the silt fence as things that, flatter areas where we can. We're gonna get some of the steel posts out and fence cut off where we can. So we're working on that. Old Highway 34, they got the rock down last week, on Friday for the interlayer. We call it the rock interlayer before they put the seal coat on. So the heavy rains really did not affect our portion of it since our rock was down. It sheds the water pretty well, and our ditches that we had cut out there worked really well. We, I don't know what the exact total was, but it was for sure over an inch in an hour in that location, and we had water over roads in some other places. But on that particular area, it worked pretty good. They're waiting for things to dry out so they can finish putting the rock in Jefferson County, so they moved to another project to work on rock, but they will be coming back, so it could be another couple weeks before we see the seal coat coming out there on that road. Downstone, they were continuing the crushing operation. I could have probably done a little better language, I apologize. They completed yesterday, is what I was trying to say there, and we were just shy of 125,000 tons, so we had a contract for 124. We told them to finish the day out, so we were just a little under 125,000 tons. And that's processed, so that includes your lime that we have to pay for, the road stone, and then we had bedding stone that we had to so the total of that was right at just shy of 125,000 tons. So over the next week or two, they'll be moving their equipment out, and then we'll be out of Imshaw at the quarry, and then we'll be working on using our rock piles that we have out there, so.
Just a question for you on that. The other day when you were in, you mentioned something about the lime that is a byproduct of that. So are you gonna put something on your website or let folks know?
We have not done that in the past. If you guys want me to, I can. It's always been kind of just whenever we have time. It's usually 1 or 2 times a year that we'll actually do it, but we haven't really advertised it that much, so that's something if you guys want me to.
But you always get rid of it, it's always gone.
It's not gone. It's, I've got more than I could probably ever get rid of, to be honest, so, it's a waste product, and so, we definitely can look into it if you guys want me to.
The reason I mentioned it is because last year when you mentioned it, I was fairly new to the whole process, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good stuff. So,
Depending on what you're using it for, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a thing, the goal of the county quarry is not to compete with local businesses or other quarries, so the rock has always been ours. So we don't sell rock. This is a waste product that we have no use for, so that would kind of come back to you guys on it. My preference would be is to set the price near what I'm paying to have that waste product. So this year it'd be right around $7 a ton. But we have.
that's what we're mentioning too much.
So again, I do not wanna get in the business of organizing my crew. It's more of, hey, it's fall time, we're slowing down a little bit, we can put a guy out in the end loader for the day, and that's typically how we operate right
So
now.
typically late, not fall.
Yeah,
Fall, okay.
I say that, I'm sure there was some times we've done it in the spring, but we don't do it very often, so.
Okay, thank you.
Concrete patching tools. So I talked to you a little bit before about this. We're working with Washington County on a shared agreement, for concrete patching tools and a trailer. And then essentially what we're looking at doing is very similar to our shoulder pull machine that we have with 7 other counties. We're looking at, buying tools together with Washington County that would be a patching trailer with all of our stuff in a trailer. And basically whoever's gonna go do concrete patching, just needs to hook up this trailer. You go out, you have your cones, you have your saw, your forms, your concrete blankets, whatever we need that would be in that trailer. So, we kind of already agreed that, hey, we're good to move forward with that. The agreement's not done, but they're in the process of purchasing stuff, so we would just get a bill for our portion of that when it comes through. And again, that'd be a joint ownership. We're gonna do a 28D that allows us to make sure that it's, talk about how we dissolve it down the future if somebody wants to get out. Very similar to how we did the shoulder pull machine, so.
Just the 2 counties.
Just the 2 counties, we don't, and that'll be enough as it is. It's not a huge ticket item. I think we're roughly right around 30,000 total, so it'd be 15 for our share. The biggest portion is probably the trailer, the saw, and the concrete breaker that we'll have that attaches to either one of our skid loaders that we have. So, and again, the idea is just to make it to where, right now, we throw things in pickup trucks, flatbed trailer, it would just be, hey, we're gonna go do some patching, we hook up to the trailer, we take off, everything's there. So I think it'll work pretty good, so just to kind of keep you guys up to date on that. And then my last item is Jewel Avenue. Al Pelling called me yesterday. We had received a quote for them to do the seal coat on Jewel Avenue, so they moved in today actually to work on that seal coat. And that is that landowner, the property owners out there pay for that, so they're doing that today, just FYI.
Did you ever have any follow-up from the folks at Northland on Burge or any of those, Jesse?
No,
By chance?
nobody's contacted me yet on that.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right, I'll follow up with them, just so that we don't have a gap. I think we've forgotten.
Yeah, I know he stopped in one day when they were doing some stuff in the cemetery lot paving and mentioned that they would like to see something done, but we never talked to him more about it than that.
Okay, well, I forwarded all that.
And that would have been after the fact, after that conversation.
Okay, I'll follow up a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I got, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Here, Jake.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Northland Securities. Heidi, Kuhl, if you wanna sit there.
I'll sit right up here. Oh, that's great.
Just for the, those in attendance, Heidi has worked with the company that we is gonna want our bonding with. Northland has our jail bond, and we've done debt service levy with her. So, when we were at, spring school, we all 3 talked to Heidi, and, she said she'd be glad to come down and talk to us sometime, and so today's the day. And we thought it was very appropriate with the understanding, I think, the difference between, escrow and bonding, and, then also talk debt service levy and, maybe some TIF too. So Heidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I worked for the county, worked for some of the cities around the area too. What I wanted to do is just kind of give a quick overview to the board. If you look on the right side of your folder, it's a Henry County, Iowa general obligation debt. Page 2 just has just a summary of the last 5 years of your valuation. So when you are looking at borrowing, you're using the valuations. So just want to give you an idea of where that 100% valuation has been, and then that taxable value. So when we're looking at those 100% values, that's the 100% of the value that's in the entire part of the county. The portion that you can tax on is based off of the rollback. And the rollback is set by the state each year, so that's the difference between the two. You're seeing that in the last 5 years, you've had average growth, just over 6% in your 100%, and then actually just shy of 2% in that taxable value. The reason we see differences in between that is because of that rollback. There was a pretty significant change in the residential rollback a couple years ago. So that's where we're seeing that the 100% is higher than the taxable. You're growing basically kind of at the average for Iowa. So just want to kind of give you that forefront as it's detailed in a budget deck. The next page is a debt capacity analysis. So if you're going to issue general obligation debt bonds, you have to do a legal debt capacity. So what that is you're taking those 100% values that we looked at in your fiscal year, you're taking that times 5%, and that's your legal debt capacity. So of your 1.8 billion, your legal debt capacity is 92 million. That is not a suggestion to borrow 92 million, that is just the legal threshold. So a lot of times cities have a lot less valuation associated with them, so they are jumping up against their capacity versus counties. Typically we're not seeing very high percentages. There is just one bond currently outstanding for the county, and that is for fiscal year 2025. You've got 6.6 million outstanding. That is for the jail bond. So that total percent, so you're only using 6.6 million. You have 84 million outstanding, with only using about 7%. Tells you that you're in pretty good shape. If you needed to borrow for small projects or things like that, I wouldn't have any issues from a capacity or legal standpoint.
As long as it's below the 84 million now.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot less than the 84 million. There are some counties that have a little bit higher debt loads out there, but most of them are not. 40% is probably the highest I've seen outstanding there. So that kind of gives you an idea. But most are in that 10 to 15% range. So.
Is there a legal or a defined percent of payment on a year-to-year basis then, like a 10-year, 20-year type bond, or is there like a balloon payment at the end on those?
So they can be structured in many different ways. General obligation debt does require that it is paid off within 20 years. So when we looked at the jail bond, looking at doing the tax impact there, we spread that bond out over 20 years. Now, if you're financing something like, a vehicle or a road, or something that would have a shorter lifespan, we'd look at financing, 3, 5, 10, 15.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I do have some that, you know, if you have expected revenues coming in later, you may actually not have it level, you may have a balloon. So it just kind of depends on the scenario of how you would structure it. But your one bond outstanding, you'll see here is it just kind of drops down incrementally on a level basis. The next page, which is, I find more interesting, is a summary of, if you had more than one debt, this would have the total of all the principal and interest payments that the county has outstanding. So you'll see, starting on the left, we have that 6.6 million, with your interest of 1.8, your annual debt payments, your paying agent, and disclosure fees for a total of 8.4 million outstanding. Those payments are range from about 645,000 to 650,000 per year. You can pay for general obligation debt with different sources of income if it's legally available. However, this is paid back by the debt service levy, meaning that there is $1 per thousand that is put into the budget each year to make these payments. So for fiscal year 2025, that debt service levy was 64 cents. With your valuation growth from for fiscal year 2026, that dropped to about 62 cents, just with that valuation growth there. Then the rest of these payments I have based off of no growth, but it's, you know, assuming that you continue to have that steady growth, yeah, that debt service levy will drop. Last page, just has the, information of that, 2018 bond, which is the jail that has the principal, the interest. You'll see that they're in ascending order, so you'll see 3% all the way up to 4%. Bonds are issued serially, annually, so you'll see a different interest rate from each year. Just so you can see how those payments are made. I think it's important to note that when you issue bonds, a lot of times those payments are locked for a period of time. So actually coming up next year, 6/1 of 2026, these bonds will be callable, meaning that if the county had cash on hand to pay it off, you could pay it off at that time. If interest rates were to drop lower to these 3 and 4%, we could look at refinancing that. At Northland, we're constantly monitoring for refunding, so if something gets kind of into the money, we'll make you aware of that. Let you know that right now there is not a lot of refunding or refinancing going on based off of, you know, the current interest rate environment.
Makes sense.
Then I have a sheet that's still on the right side here. It says just at the top, prepared for Henry County, Iowa. The county has done some capital projects and put some of that on the debt service levy. Wanted to just kind of give you an idea of where interest rates are at today, and how much you could borrow with, you know, what you've done in the past. That debt service levy has been about 22 cents. If you're looking at doing a 3-year, that gets you about 440,000. 5 years, 850. 7 years, 1.2. 10 year is 1.7. All kind of having that average interest rate of about 232 to 34,000.
Good information for any projects we might want to consider for any one department in particular, so.
I think everybody's looking at you.
I don't know.
You know, I did also on the left side, I'm not gonna go into details here, but basically I just copied from Iowa Code some of the things that you can borrow for and some of the projects.
On the debt service levy?
on the debt service levy. Also for fun, just since I am a bond and an interest rate person, I've included where interest rates are at today. This left side where it says bank qualified here, the quotes I put before were based off of non-rated rates. However, if you are looking at issuing like a large amount of bonds, and maybe going into the bond market, we would look at possibly using the county's outstanding rating and going, I believe you have an A+ outstanding rating.
Something on that order.
And so you'll see this orange column here versus the brown column here, the difference in the interest rates. Each year has a different interest rates associated with it, but it's about 80 basis points or 0.8% difference on the front end, and it probably, well, it stays about the same up to about 2042. So. Also, I think is interesting as well is just I've put together some charts for people who like the visuals of where interest rates have been for the last 5 years. This is based off of 20-year general obligation bonds. I have 25 as that black line. We've had a little bit of volatility yet this year. And then you start to see where some of your lower interest rates in 21 and 22. I think the next page shows a little bit more of a longer term picture of where bond interest rates have been over the last 20 years. Questions there? Have they gotten anybody excited?
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently,
All
this
nervous
is.
stuff.
Don't know what to ask you.
I think it's good information for some long-term planning as we go forward with some other projects that are potential. So I think we have some other questions as well.
And that's something she can do sometime also for us, long-term planning goals.
Yes, if you have kind of a list of projects and things that you'd like to do from a planning perspective, I can kind of put them all out and see how those can fit.
From a financial
From
perspective.
a financial perspective.
Okay, that's good. We probably should do that before the end of the year.
Before budgeting time.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we do that at ISAC at all? Take time, would really come down. Doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter, it probably makes more sense to come down and
Okay.
go through those things together.
Okay. Just put that on your radar because it's on ours.
What types of projects is it you're looking at? Smaller capital projects or?
Well, one's a larger
Buildings.
capital project,
Yeah.
right, with maintenance shed out at the
Yeah,
secondary roads.
Make a major improvement out there, because our maintenance building is outdated for the equipment that we have. And we need some better facilities.
Are you guys even taking a look at a cost on that, Jake?
It's been a couple years. We did look at the storage bay and a wash bay, and then that came in way too high, so we had to scrap that. But kind of focus now is looking at the mechanics shed side, or where we keep all of our mechanics working, and try to incorporate it into one building. But I think that's some questions I have, is how much more detail do we need to have before we get ready to look at that? We need to do some developing of plans.
Yeah, we do. We need to put some numbers together, see where we're at on cost, and maybe a couple of options that we can work with Heidi, so we know where we're at.
And see if it actually works for
Yep.
where we're at with our scale.
Might be helpful too, so when you're borrowing, you have to follow Iowa code, and based on the project, there are different legal procedures procedures that you have to go through in order to borrow. So when you're looking at, a building facility, you know, usually you're looking at, if it's a large building, you know, you're looking at maybe going out to the voters and getting that 60%, for any dollar amount. There is a part of code that does allow, for you to borrow up to $780,000 for building projects for a single building project. And that, is done with a hearing, that you can kind of go ahead and go forward with. So, those are kind of the two main options. There's other types of financing, looking at local option sales tax and, general fund loans and things like that. But the two main, when you're looking at buildings, you're looking at, either doing up to that 780 and going through that hearing process, or going ahead and going, out to the voters and getting that 60%.
So that 780 would be the same thing we've done for debt service
Yes,
in the past.
and that number did increase, I think it was 2 legislative sessions ago, just due to inflation. So we got a little bit more room. It's still kind of a tough number to meet for buildings the size that you're speaking of.
Can you incorporate 2 of them into one?
So it
Like-
is per project. So the way that it's written in code is per building project. So if you had 2 separate buildings, you know, you'd have 780 for one building and 780 for, you know, the other building.
I mean, you couldn't incorporate, debt service with local option sales tax
Run 2 programs.
to get the money?
So the way, in every other borrowing does not have that limitation of that 780. It is literally the entire project cost has to be under that 780. Every other type of borrowing, you can do cash or local option, but this building code is very, restrictive.
Sure, there's a way around that. Building to a building. Okay.
I mean, my other question to you when I talked to you on the phone was escrow bonding, and if you're ready to go to that point.
We'll talk a little bit about it, yeah.
Because I have questions on that. I mean, what do you see the difference in what would happen?
So, when you're looking at the ordinance there, it's listed that an escrow account or putting it in the bond in an account. And what it is asking is basically ensuring that the owners of, the wind farm have funding available, to pay for damages, deconstruction, so that it's in an account and they can, make and pay for those types of things. Now,
When you say that, can you, like, the process to do that, so, let's say they have a $5 million bond, what would a $5 million bond cost ballpark wise on a wind structure like that? And then what would be the process for us to have to go through to work with that enterprise to make sure that we can get those funds? Is there an application process that would come back on that?
so
How
if
long
the
do you
owner,
think?
if the owner is putting, it would be solely on them to get
Correct.
that bonding process
Mhm.
completed. Or an escrow account, that'd be solely on them. So, I'm gonna be completely honest that it's a little bit different than the county funding. Depending on how the ordinance is written, the county shouldn't have to, set up any type of those, any of those accounts, whether it's bonding or escrow. You can write in that ordinance however you want to maintain or track those accounts. But you're going to want, that owner to have those funds on hand, in order to, just take care and maintenance and fix it.
Okay, it sounds like a little bit of a gray area, but when you say when the owner has the funds on hand and available, so a bond is something that he purchases or they purchase, and it sits out there as an entity. And then if we need to attach those funds from a bond perspective, there would be a process to have to go through, correct, to be able to get the money? Like, we would have to contact the company, and then the company would have to contact the bonding agent, and the bonding agent then would have to come back to us and.
Yes, so there would be a process, depending on how that bond is written, of how they can draw, there would need to be a period of when they can draw down the funds. And so I guess my advice would be is that that if you would go through that bonding process, that it would be readily available for them to draw, at any time. Certainly the bonds can have more restrictive,
I think that's the concern, availability, accessibility on a more quick basis rather than, and we have an example of something that happened in Louisa County where they were unable to, because the entity had sold 2 or 3 times. It was very difficult for those folks to track that. And it was a bond, and the bonds had expired, and they stayed with the owner of the entity, and every time that entity sold, that bond was terminated. So, is that pretty normal, do you think? The bond always stays with the owner of the entity, correct?
it should stay with the owner of the entity.
Okay, I think there's a couple questions for me.
So we'd have to talk to our legal counsel then and make sure that it was written into the ordinance that was transferred over.
Yeah, you'd wanna have that, so it's readily available.
For us non-financial people, talk about an escrow versus a bond. What, would there be advantages of having an escrow fund that maybe doesn't get tapped into except in an emergency situation? But would there be and I think I'm using the right word anyway, but a kitty full of money for a pot full of money that would be readily available should one fall down, one blow down, catastrophic failure, whatever the event, what would be the best mechanism for the county to be able to plug into utilizing those funds for a cleanup effort? Because quickly, because that's what Steve was talking about, the Louisa County. I mean, you're chasing dog and pony show. Who's the owner of this thing now? You know, that's not quickly, and that doesn't get things cleaned up very fast.
Now, I guess with the escrow account, typically those can be, they're written with a lot less restrictions on them, but really between the two options, certainly there really is, as long as there are not any restrictions on that bond or that escrow, I really don't have an opinion on which one would be better. It's really just ensuring that both are very liquid. And typically an escrow account is liquid.
I think, it seems like on my own home finances, I got an escrow account to pay for different things throughout the year and whatnot. It's readily available. I mean, it's boom, it's there. Should something happen, I guess I'm thinking it'd be nice to have the county in that same position. Boom, something happens, boom, there it is, it's readily available. Rather than have to go through the.
Can you ballpark, give us an idea, what would a $5 million bond cost for somebody that had a AAA rating, fairly insignificant dollars? I mean, 100,000, $1 million?
So the bond,
Is that a tough question?
that's a tough question. It's just kind of based off the credit, and the actual term, but
the upfront money to whoever owns the entity is gonna be substantially less, correct? For the most part. I think that kind of gets back to your point, and we can talk about this when we talk about the ordinance, but one of the things we talk about with the road use agreement, for example, is we need those funds available within 30 days to be able to make repairs, and so
we had an issue with the bond situation, it may not be quite as liquid and quite as quick to access those funds to be able to make those repairs, so the onus would fall on us as a county to make those repairs and then try to get some reimbursement. So we can talk about that more in detail, I think there's some issue there.
And just so I wanna make sure the county would not be responsible for buying or obtaining anything like that. That would be the builder's sole responsibility, my understanding, right?
So I wrote down.
That was my understanding as well.
It would be on, in the ordinance that would be written, this is a requirement.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, a really good point. You buy insurance for a catastrophic situation. We need to buy a bond for a catastrophic situation to make sure that we do get reimbursed at some point.
Or something isn't right.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
But Jake does all the time, if something isn't right, we get bonds for road
On our
projects.
construction project,
So if something isn't right, you have something to come back on.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
usually the leverage is that the owner is gonna decide at what point do they wanna execute the bond, they're gonna take their losses internally. So, I mean, it depends on the size of the project, that makes a difference, but yeah.
And these are all pretty sizable.
Thank you, you answered that question for us, thank you. Now. The other one. I know we had some interesting tips.
Sure. I pulled it out, I guess I don't know what side it was on, maybe it was on the right side, it'll say TIF bonding presentation. So I guess, I'll give you kind of the forefront here is, nope,
That's not it.
straight line.
Straight lines? Okay.
It's on the right side, very last sheet.
Very last sheet. Oh, you've written on there already, debt service.
I've been writing
Yep,
on it.
you've been
Okay.
writing on it. You got it? I guess what I'll preface with is, I am not your bonding attorney, I'm your financial advisor, so some of this stuff does talk a little bit about legals, just because this stuff comes hand in hand. I'll talk, briefly and give you an overview of what it looks like. So, just to kind of give you a summary is the urban renewal law was originally put, in place in Iowa to, eliminate light and slum areas. And then also to, promote economic development, whether that's through commercial or industrial. And then there also is a subset, is in housing. You can find the TIF law, in chapter 403. And what is TIF? It's, a lot of times people, that's really the biggest question is what is it, what does it do? TIF is taking tax revenues from new valuation and allocating it towards debt for an economic development project or alleviating blight and slum. So, a lot of times is hey, we have this new project coming in, it's $20 million. If there was, $20 million of new valuation, if there was $5 million that was already there, you cannot TIF that $5 million, you can only TIF the new 20 million. So it's always looking forward, and it's diverting revenues into a different bucket in order to help pay for economic development. So a lot of times that'll help pay for infrastructure for that to come in.
So how that breaks down is however you write the TIF, whether it's a 90-10 or an 80-20 or whatever the case may be, right?
Yes, so, and then also if, a lot of times it's looked at as a rebate agreement, so you have a new, commercial, gas station come into town and you wanna rebate them 50% of their taxes over a period of time. You know, there's a lot of discretion on how much of that TIF could be used to rebate it. The other way it's looked at is that, then if, the city or the county is actually putting in a road for it, the city will take those future TIF revenues, to pay back a loan, to put in a road that was required to have that business come in.
Makes sense. So it kind of ties into what we do out of Wesleyan on Hershey Hall.
So how do you collect TIF? First, you have to create an urban renewal area. So that is where the TIF is collected. So if you have a new gas station, you have a new wind farm, whatever it is, you have to create that area. And you'll be putting those parcels together, and putting it into a legal document. Then you're making a declaration, is this is economic development, or if you are rebating slum or blight areas. There are some consultations that are required when you're putting those urban renewal areas together, within a 2-mile radius. So you'll have to, if you're within a 2-mile radius of cities and then the school districts, it is required that you have consultations for that. And then you'll hold a public hearing as well. So you set up that area. So you set up the area where the dollars are collected. There also is a requirement that you also make an urban renewal plan. So this is where the TIF dollars will be spent. So, those will be listed as projects, whether it's a road project, a rebate agreement, or whatever, you know, whatever that project is that you're using TIF dollars on, you put those in the plans, and then you put, a not to exceed amount that you're going to be reimbursing or paying back debt. Also, it's required that you do some sort of debt. So it has to repay a debt, whether it's a rebate agreement, or you're paying back some sort of loan. That can be an internal loan, that can be a loan with a bank or a bond market, but it has to be some sort of debt repayment. The TIF cannot directly pay a project, it has to pay back that debt.
Martin, you know, do we have that plan with Hershey Hall? Have you seen all that documentation?
It was all forwarded to all the meetings that you guys all approved of. And they're upstairs in a folder if you wanna look at it.
Southeast Iowa Regional Plan. I'm gonna see them later today. I'll ask a few more questions.
And then, in order to collect that TIF, the county auditor's office has to certify those debts, those internal loans, those rebate agreements, or private or bond. They have to be certified in the county auditor's office by December 1st. So, for example, TIF debt certified, by December 1, 2024, so last year, you would have had to have that debt certified, to be collected for your fiscal year 25-26. So all that TIF certification happens prior to you starting really, well, getting into the real nit and gritty of your budgeting session for 25-26. As the law currently states, how long can TIF be collected? There has to be debt outstanding in order to collect that, that TIF. But for slum and blight, there's currently no legal date of collection. So you set up a TIF area and you have debt outstanding, technically you could collect TIF forever, on slum and blight. For economic development, for commercial and industrial, that is 20 years. And then for housing projects, It's 11 years, or, you can extend it out to 16 with permission from the schools, and the county, if it's within a city, so they have to have some special permission by resolution.
And everybody would have to agree on that.
To extend it out, that extra 5 years. A lot of times it'll just show the economics of needing that extra 5 years to pay off the infrastructure. I will note that housing TIF has, an LMI set aside requirement, meaning that if you're putting in, market housing, if you're using TIF to rebate expenses, you have to actually set aside a portion of that TIF, and only use it for LMI purposes, low to moderate purposes. And that is set by the state's, or the county's, percentage of LMI. So. Last point I can talk about, so impact on budget, so I get a lot of questions on this, how is this impacting me? So, if an entity puts that new $20 million into a TIF area, that TIF value gets diverted away from the county's, general, operating dollar, from the school's dollar, until that debt is paid off. So, the school has that $5.40 levy. You've got your $3.50. You get your $3.50 on the county levy. So those get diverted, and so you won't see that come into your budget valuations for that operating value. I will note, currently, school districts, that 540 is backfilled by the state by 87.5%. So it's.
Decide how much.
So the TIF dollars themselves, who actually gets those TIF dollars? Is that a rebate back to the builder?
So if it's the county that certifies the TIF, the county will receive the TIF. If the city certifies the TIF, the city will receive the TIF and then make their payments to whoever they have
The
been
entity
indebted,
that-
yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Just wanna make sure I was clear on that.
That was a really quick summary of TIF.
But at the end of the program, the full taxable value would then
Then
come
go back
back to
onto
the
it.
county,
Yep.
onto the regular tax roll
Yep.
at the end of the TIF agreement time period.
And then I will note that there are certain levies that are protected. The debt service levy is protected, so, if, even if, a city TIFs a certain area, the debt service levy is not included in that TIF set aside. There's also, one of the school levies is like the Pebble levy, that's not included, and there's a couple other smaller ones that I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's a few protected levies. I think that's, important, especially for counties, is that when there are some cities that have larger TIF areas, your debt service levy is not impacted by that, but your operating, your 350 levy, under general fund is.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
We might not have enough information to fully answer this, but you had said something about the collection of the TIF, the money goes back. I just made a note here. Does this allow payment of TIF money? County collects it, then reallocates that then to the developer to fund the renovation project and everything like that. That is an approved routing system for that.
That rebate, yeah, so
Yeah.
you would have actually that debt, and I don't have it listed here, but that debt is actually the rebate agreement that you put in place.
And that's part of that agreement that the developer would collect that
Yep.
back into the renovation of that project
Mhm.
until the sunset of that agreement, then the county would collect
Assessed value.
the the taxation collected on that valuation at that time.
Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's really good overview on both sides of that. Thank you very much.
Answered a lot of questions, and also,
Great to go.
we can raise it to you, and we know how to get hold of you.
Perfect. We're ready. Well, thank you.
If we don't see you before August.
That'll be here before we know it.
Exactly.
Or you can always stick around if you want. All
Well,
that
I
fun.
see what you said, Sharon.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Turned out high too.
Will do.
So, next on our agenda, Sheriff McNamee, you are up.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I appeared
Come
before,
up forward.
I'm fine, if that's all right with you. I appeared before you guys on November 7th, 2024 and January 29th, 2025 to address the ongoing issue of need for outside counsel county approved, as it is a significant expense and it's necessitated by my official duties as the sheriff and a conflict of interest on the part of the county attorney. I provided a detailed basis both times, including precedent from our state Supreme Court in support of my request. The board took the matter under advisement and decided both times to deny my request based on the legal advice of the county attorney. I handled those earlier matters at my own expense. Despite the county despite this being a county sheriff's office matter, I obtained counsel and paid for the county sheriff's office business at my personal expense. I return again, asking the board to approve outside counsel to represent me in a pending matter. I was requested by the Iowa Attorney General to participate in a deposition regarding an Iowa Law Enforcement Academy certification of a former decertification of a former deputy sheriff. I went to Des Moines to give that deposition on April 10th of this year. Partway through the deposition, I was informed by the Attorney General that they were not my legal counsel. I was told to request the county attorney or personal counsel to represent me at that deposition. Needless to say, without counsel there, I stopped the deposition and ended it that day. I've been told in a conversation with the Attorney General's office that they recommended I speak with the county attorney or private counsel and seek a motion to quash the partial deposition that I gave. The depositions and the following hearing on that matter are still pending. They're being rescheduled with a tentative date scheduled for the hearing in July, so that means I'll have to do that deposition between now and July. I've spoken with the county attorney on the matter, and quite frankly, we had a really nice conversation on it. For clarity, Mr. Stater has told me that his office will attend the depositions and the hearing if we want him to do so. The reason I'm here today asking for outside counsel is twofold. First, I believe Mr. Stater's office has a conflict of interest in this matter. The former deputy in question is a personal friend of at least one of the employees of the county attorney's office, maybe more. Secondly, I believe that Mr. Stater's office will not serve me as my office, as adequate counsel for my office. After the partial deposition on April 10th, I met with Mr. Stater and my chief deputy. During that conversation to review this matter, Mr. Stater told me that he was not my legal counsel and would not personally represent me or any officer as legal counsel. This after months of telling you guys and I that he was the only one that could represent Henry County and its officers in legal matters. He told me that his purpose of office was to prosecute crimes in Henry County, protect the county from liability, and if an officer commits perjury while in court, he'll work through this matter and refer it to a neighboring counsel for prosecution. During the same conversation, I asked about the motion to quash, and Mr. Stater told me he would not be requesting that. He told me to give the depositions thoroughly and honestly, and I have no doubt that that's what I will do. I do not feel after conversation with him that he will have adequate representation of me nor my office in those depositions or hearing. Once again, I make a request to the Henry County Board of Supervisors to approve Ellis Law as my outside counsel at county expense due to a conflict of interest and a lack of adequate legal counsel in the county sheriff's office's matters. Thank you.
Could I have a copy of what you read, Rich, so I can?
Yep.
So Rich, just for clarity, if I could, for
Yes, sir.
the group of us, so your request is representation of legal counsel with payment by the county, is that from this point forward with House File 862? Or are you asking for back pay as well for those legal counsel?
At this point, Mr. Diedrich, I'm asking for counsel for this process, this ILA counsel.
Okay.
We all know the law passed on Monday. It says I can ask for my back pay, and I'm not asking for that at this time, but I probably will be. It's a lot of money, and I had to mortgage my home to pay county expenses.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Moving on, thank you, Rich. We have the second reading of the alternate